Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Healing with Excellence podcast. This is your holistic health expert, Kimberly Miller, and I have two amazing special guests today, Nico and Tiffany Bellavilas, and they are here to share their story with us so that we can hopefully inspire others and help others heal effectively with the intent of preventing some of the torture that each of us have all been through in the past with our healing journey. Just want to make sure that we get out authentic information and that we can hopefully share best practices. Okay, so Nico, Tiffany, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Excited to be here.
Yes. So if you could share, so we just met in February, and I'll share like my perspective of what happened in a little bit. But prior to us meeting, can Tiffany or Nico kind of share like what you had went through prior to February, prior to being hospitalized, and what led to your hospitalization? And then I can kind of interject what happened on my end and then how we connected and crossed paths.
Yeah, we'll kind of both share our sides, but for the past 17 years, I've battled some type of chronic illness, whether it was medullary sponge kidney disease, gastroparesis, chronic migraines, ulcerative colitis, all of the above, chronic fatigue, probably things that I was never even diagnosed with, but I've always battled something. And it always felt like whack-a-mole, where I'd get one thing under control and then another thing would pop up. And it was just this vicious cycle. And I just never was able to maintain the healing that I achieved. So I was put on steroids 7 years ago. And that continued just a downward spiral where I got worse and worse and worse. And the health issues that I had just blew up on me until.
And you were put on the steroids because of a bad ulcerative colitis flare up.
So I had the doctor put me on a very high dose and told me, I'm going to take you on a slow taper so that you don't develop adrenal insufficiency, which is pretty ironic because that's exactly what I ended up developing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, because I think what happened was you found out that you had multiple spinal fractures, and is that why you decided to stop the prednisone or the steroids?
No,
what triggered you to stop the steroids?
I had been trying to get off steroids for about 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I would get down to about 20 to 15 milligrams, and then my body would go into adrenal crises, or I'd end up in the hospital. My body would go into multi-system organ failure, and I was never able to fully achieve that taper. So doctors told me that I would always need steroids because I had stopped producing cortisol and the other necessary hormones. So they told me that the lowest I would ever be able to get was about 5 milligrams for the rest of my life. So that was the prognosis, but obviously here I am today, and quite contrary.
Exactly.
So, just to combat that, nutritionally, just doing everything we could, every diet, every
I became a guinea pig, literally.
If it was holistic, if it was another way, we did everything we could. And even with the steroid use, whatever natural supplements or things we could take to combat the bone loss or whatever it was, we did everything we could to be disciplined. I told people there was no cheat days. There were years where the diet was just beyond strict. No refried sugar, no gluten, no whatever it was.
Out every day of my life.
And
I did therapies up the yin yang. I mean, there was nothing that I did not.
For what we knew, we did everything we could to have a really healthy life.
But I was actually missing very crucial elements that Dr. Kimberly Miller implemented, and I never even had considered up until that point, which was she made it so simple for me. It just you changed everything when you said, just eat food and rest and you'll be good.
No, it's so funny you said no, and that's so true. And that's what we'll talk about several things today about how some of it in the beginning really is what seems like a very simple foundation. And then there's fancy stuff we can get to later, especially some of the protocols you've been through in the past. But what you and I talked about is sometimes it's about, is the right modality being placed at the right time? And what you're going through, hundreds of thousands of people go through, they feel like they've done everything. So they just accept that this is their fate, this is their body, and that they just have to do the best they can until basically they transition to a different place, And so I
Right.
can understand where you were. And then we have a good story about the doctor thing. It's easier for them to refer to me as just like Dr. Kim, because it's hard to explain everything about what we do differently, what I do differently at Healing with
And
Excellence.
she is the most qualified doctor that I have
Yeah.
ever experienced.
Thank you for sharing. But we know that technically that I can't be called a doctor. I didn't go to med school, and I respect those that did. And when I did learn how to heal my own chronic Epstein-Barr virus and my heart issue and all that, I was going to go back and go to med school. The difficult part is it's another decade. You have to learn at least 50% that doesn't work. You lose money in the wrong area. And then I would have to do a lot of unethical things to become a qualified physician in the United States. So for me, I'd rather leverage the physicians that believe in what we do, utilize them for what they're skilled at, and then they utilize me for what I'm skilled at. And then we work as just a really good team to create the best possible outcome. Because as you saw, you had your nurse practitioner and some IV specialists that came in to help support. So that was all a huge blessing. So right before you were hospitalized in February, you were trying to taper the prednisone again, and then that's when you had the adrenal crisis. And is it that when you were hospitalized that time is when you found out that all the vertebrae in your spine were fractured?
Yeah, so about October, I actually finally received what they call an insulin pump that I used for my steroids. Because one of the problem that I developed after being on steroids for so long was that my body was metabolizing the steroids so quickly that I couldn't just take a pill and be good for the day. So I ended up having to switch after a while. For about a year to 2 years, I was doing shots, intramuscular steroid shots 4 times a day just to stay out of an adrenal crisis. So I was upwards to 80, 100 milligrams of steroids on a daily basis. And at that point, you couldn't even tell because I wasn't swollen. I wasn't anything. I was very opposite in that way, that when the steroids were high, I looked normal. And when I had missed them, I would just blow up. So I had just received the pump in about October. And I was using it, and I had seen that it was changing my life as far as I didn't have to think about a pill. I didn't have to take shots. I just gave myself the little setup and put it in my stomach, and I was good for a day or 2 days. But after it was about November, December, I kept developing chronic infections, obviously because of the steroids. I had chronic pneumonia, I had chronic bronchitis, I had all sorts of infections, skin infections, stomach infections, you name it. So I was on antibiotics at that time and lost my train of thought. Sorry, the dogs
It's
are
okay.
barking.
You were on your antibiotics, and then something
Yes.
triggered that had you hospitalized, and
Yes,
you were
so I got
hospitalized
the
once and then a
flu.
second time.
Right, I got the flu, so I was hospitalized, and then I was home recovering for a while. And one day I went to the gym, like I always do in the morning, came home, took a bath, and I went to go set up my pump. And I think that my body was still not absorbing the steroids at that point because I ended up having an adrenal crisis while I was walking the kitchen. I fell on the ground, I hit my head, I developed a severe brain injury. I got a brain bleed, and I went into seizures, multiple seizures after that. So my husband walked in and he found me laying on the floor. Moments later, when I came to, I gave myself a shot like I know to do always when you have an adrenal crisis. And we headed off to the hospital where, again, I had multiple seizures after that. So that was the first hospitalization where they realized that I had fractures in my bone, in my spine, in my pubic bone, in my rib cage. But we didn't know the extent to it until about a month later. I came home and we thought, okay, I'm going to recover. This is going to be okay. Again, let's taper off the steroids. I'll be good. But my blood pressures were remaining dangerously high, like 200 over 121 with medication.
Wow.
So it was obviously another factor that could have triggered seizures. And eventually, again, I was sitting on the couch one night and we were declaring that I was healed and I was going to be good. And I had just sent out a text message to my family saying, we're going to fight this no matter what. And moments later, my husband and son witnessed me go into a violent seizure that lasted very long. And they took me to the hospital from there, went into more seizures. And that's where they discovered that there was a whole array of issues, including the fact that every single vertebrae in my spine had been fractured. So at that point, I was in a very, very scary spot. And we've always held on to healing. We've always known that God was going to heal me one day, somehow, some way. I would be off of the steroids, all of this. But at that point, it was looking pretty grim. And both of us needed somebody to come along, the angel that Dr. Kimberly was, to give us the courage and hope to keep fighting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, we were just, and while she was, in hospitalized and in such severe pain and all the 13, 14, 15 medications they had her on, and even while hospitalized on those high milligram blood pressure medications, all these things, they had her blood pressure was remaining, 165 over 120.
My lungs had collapsed. I also had sepsis, severe pneumonia.
Blood
I
clot.
had a blood clot in my lung. My
So-
body was just shutting
Yeah.
down in so many ways.
And I'm
Ah.
looking online for all these holistic hospitals in Germany and thinking about how I can raise $100,000 to get her over there because, it doesn't look good. The doctors, are, they're giving me the first night she got there, they told me that she probably wasn't going to make it. They want to, yeah. And then they tried to intubate her. And luckily we had gone through enough together to have the sense to be like, no, that's not what's best for her. And so luckily, we went that route of not intubating her, so kept her alive longer. Just kept her alive enough to where you could walk in the room.
Yeah, no, I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity and the blessing to do that too. And before I share my perspective of right before I walked in that room, how many years have you guys known each other? How long have you been married?
We've been known each other for 14, been married for 12.
Married for 12.
Awesome, awesome.
So
Yeah, because
Nico is not new to being my caretaker and all of that.
no. Yeah, and that's one reason why some people in the past have been used to me just interviewing the person that went through the healing. But in this situation, because we all know what it takes to be a caretaker and a servant and to honor your spouse, I wanted to make sure that Nico is here to share his perspective of what he also went through, because sustaining a caregiver during the time and giving everybody hope that it is going to work is not easy to do, and help people keep their heads above water, so to speak, to keep the faith strong, which is really what you guys did amazing at. So what happened on my end, a few months prior to all this, I had a client that said, there's this local woman that really could use your help. I know I'm friends with her brother and his wife, and I keep telling them they need to call you, they need to call you. And so she told me, I said, okay, thank you for letting me know. And didn't hear about it. Well, then all of a sudden, she tells me again that this woman, she's hospitalized. I hope that you can help her. I've told her sister-in-law. And then all of a sudden I get a text out of the blue from your sister-in-law, Sandra. And she texts me to kind of like, ask what I could do, vet me out, that kind of stuff. And so I messaged back that I would need to see the patient portal. I'd have to see what's going on to understand, and maybe understand the diagnosis to see if I could best serve and how I could help. Well, so she said, I'm going to reach out to Nico and Tiffany, see if we can get the patient portal. And in the meantime, will you follow this Instagram page? I think it's called She Conquers, right? You'll have to give me the
Conquers AI. Yep.
Okay, I'll link it in the show notes, of course, but you were sharing your story on Instagram. So she asked me to follow it. And I said, okay, I will. So then, I checked in on her a day or two later and said, oh, did you get the patient portal? And I think she responded that you guys were very overwhelmed and she was going to try to get it. So here I am watching what's happening on Instagram. And anybody that knows me knows I do what I do, not because of a career, but because it's my calling, my passion, my heart. And so I don't look at any client or patient as like just a number or a customer. I look at everybody kind of like family, or that everybody was brought to me for a specific reason. And I know that people in the professional world will say, oh, that's crossing your boundaries. And yeah, I just listen to God. I don't really listen to the lays of the land, as long as I'm doing the right thing. So on a Sunday afternoon, I was seeing the post and I just couldn't handle it, because I knew that if Tiffany didn't get different information, that she was not going to make it, that she was going to pass away. And so for me, I always have to be obedient, and then I just have to accept if the person's not able to receive or ready to receive. I just have to understand that, even if I have to watch the tragedy. So I reached out to Sandra and said, hey, I really would not normally do this on a Sunday, but I need to talk to somebody because she's not going to make it if she doesn't get another answer. And I said, maybe I don't know if I have the answer, but I have to at least try. So then she asked if I could speak to her husband because he spoke more medical terms. And so got on the phone with your brother. And then I said, you know, it's Sunday afternoon. I normally wouldn't bother you like this, but I have to at least call to try. And if they would let me into their hospital room, I think I could see if there's another answer. Well, then eventually he got the okay from you guys for me to come by. I got your room number, got on the patient portal, kind of saw everything that was going on. And then I was able to come by like literally the last week of February. And then like 3 weeks later, I found out I was flying out to Egypt. And so normally when there's these major things going on, I try to stay by the people all the time. And so I'll explain later once Nico gives his side of it. But like when Nico's like, can you stay with us every day until this is healed? I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? But anyway, so I walked into the room, and then because it is odd when someone just walks in the room and says, okay, we're going to do this muscle test. We're going to check a couple of things. What was your perception, if you can remember back, because I know it's different now, but what was your perception when I walked in the room?
Honestly, you know, she was heavily medicated, so I don't, you know, I won't speak for her. She was in and out of it. But for me, you know, working years in medical offices as an office manager to a chiropractic office and things of that nature, I'd been around certain people that they spoke well and they, you know, they had giftings, but it just didn't always pan out. So there was kind of that like, okay, who is this lady? You seem very nice, very professional. But you know, you came in and then you know, you started doing the muscle
And
testing.
at that point, I could not lift my arms more than
Yeah,
maybe
she
an
could.
inch. My legs
She couldn't lift her
could not
legs at
move.
all. And so you start telling her to do this weird stuff of, you know, rub your jaw, look left, look up. And I'm thinking the whole time, thinking like, what is this? Like this woman's
Snake oil.
crazy. And then she do it, you keep going, like, look here, do this, lift here, and nothing, nothing, nothing. And then you tell her to, I forgot where you told her to rub again. And then you said, try lifting your leg again. And her leg goes flying up. And at that moment, honestly, like I like something in my spirit dropped. Like I was afraid. I was like, yo, this is snake oil. This is something's wrong here. What is this? You know, what is this witchcraft? It was weird. It was, you know, but at the same time, I also had this sense of like, no, like this is what it should be. And so I was still I'm still amazed by what I was seeing, but at the same time, as you were there, here comes the charge manager, head floor nurse lady or whatever, come to tell us that, hey, you know, we can't really stabilize your blood pressure. We can't do anything. We need this hospital bed. We got to kick you out.
And we were at that time waiting for a full-time nurse that would come stay with me to basically go through the dying process at home.
And
So that ended up not working
and,
out.
no, and we didn't
sending
have
us home without any.
yeah, no medical bed, all these things that we had already been going through, all these hours of phone calls and doing all this stuff for. And then so they're like, yeah, you know, you got to get out. And sorry.
Okay.
And so then seeing seeing you respond, and you know, you were immediately like, well, you're okay. I got a medical bed, you know, my house is plenty big. You can come stay with me. I'll take care of you. We had never experienced anything like that. And so as much as it was like, you know, what is going on? Like, you know, what's this woman doing? Like, I just immediately like was so overwhelmed. Like, man, this like she's willing to help like this. Like, we're getting kicked out of a hospital. Literally, like, you're not helping my wife. She's getting worse. You've already tried to do all these things that would have killed her. And look what it says not to. Now you're kicking us out of hospital. And here's this woman out of nowhere that come and does something that we had no idea she could even do. And now it's offered for us to stay. And so just in that moment, we're just overwhelmed and blown away. And like, you know, this is it. This is what this has to be it. And so.
And you had such confidence that I was gonna live. You know, you told me you can do this, we can heal. And when you said, I don't know, you gave me a time frame, and I'm thinking like, what? Really? This is possible? But we just jumped on it because it was hope. It was an anchor of faith. It was something that we could just dive into.
Yeah,
and
that's why I told you, you know, you had to be around us every day because, you know, I was always the hopeful one. I was the one in her family, everyone like, we're good.
Every time she'd walk in the room, I instantly got stronger. I instantly got better. There was something about she would put her hands on me and I'd be my body and spasms.
I always tell people you can't give somebody something you don't have. And every time you would come around her, you could impart that strength, you could impart that courage because of your story and what you had been through. And it was the first time I experienced anyone that had that confidence, that had that boldness.
Most people that saw me were terrified.
Yeah.
Most people that saw me looked at me like they'd seen a ghost and
Mm.
never gave me hope like you did.
Yeah. And so, and I share that story with you, but, when you had come in and you're like, yeah, we're going to get off all these medications and all, like, I was blown away. Like, doctors don't say that. They
I
don't.
was on anti-seizure medication, anti-blood clot.
Yeah, she was on 13 medications, and you were just going through, yeah, don't need that, don't need that, don't need that, don't need it. And it was just, I've never, I've just seen the fear in the medical industry. Like, you don't, when it comes to medication, when it comes to certain things, like everyone's, there's such fear. And like, who is this fearless lady that just coming in here and just, so it was amazing. It was nothing like we had ever experienced. And we'd gone to all these specialists and all these different places. But like I said, this was something different.
No, I appreciate, and I felt exactly what you guys felt. And sometimes you don't realize how profound it is until you live it or see it on the other side of it, and that's when I first got there. I knew I could figure out the problem from 17 years ago really quickly because I knew they'd missed the root cause with a neuromuscular problem. And I knew I could figure that out fast, but I knew it wouldn't heal quickly because of what you had been through and because of the wasting of the healthy tissue and having to withdraw from 13 medications and figure out the right supplements or the right herbs or whatever else. Because like you guys said, you had tried everything. You had tried hundreds of supplements, various herbs. And so sorting through all those variables takes some time, but I knew that if you stayed on the same regimen that you were on, especially because it wasn't giving you any positive return, that it was only going to lead to basically your demise. And
we know that,
yeah, no, and it was funny because to me now this is so natural and so normal because it is a gift, but also I've had the opportunity and the blessing to be able to serve so many people in this area. That when you're like, Kim, that took some real balls to come off. I know we shouldn't say that on the podcast, but we're going to do it. We're just going to be real. But I was like, oh, I didn't even think it was a big deal. But I understand, especially because, in the medical community, they're really harped on about, legalities and all that. But to me, if someone dies, to me, that's a bigger issue than, helping them figure out a path to living. So we found the neuromuscular issue, which I'd say I have over 100 people per year that I see that are misdiagnosed with what Tiffany's had. And like with what Tiffany's experienced, if they don't get the right information, it could be years of torture. And some people do, get a colon resection or, have a colostomy. There's all kinds of things that takes place if they don't get the right information. And it's so when Nico and Tiffany shared muscle testing, some people are used to applied kinesiology muscle testing. We're asking the body questions and it's responding. I was doing more of a neuromuscular assessment where I'm using physical therapy muscle testing, but looking at which muscles are compensating somewhere else, or like where was the breaker flipped? Because the nervous system is like an electrical system, fuses can blow, so to speak, in certain areas, or the breaker can flip. And if you find the correct muscle where the brain's communicating incorrectly and you fix that, then it starts to open up the pathways and things start to communicate clearly. So there's a part in her paraspinals and her thoracic spine that was overworking, and it was impacting the nerve from communicating effectively to her GI tract for years, probably since she was in high school.
Which is amazing, Dr. Kim, because I got into a severe car accident when I was about 15, which is about a year before it all started. And my parents would always say, we have to get to the root of this. And here you are, you found the root of it.
Yes, no, and it's interesting. I just had another young girl that she just went to her grad bash night at Universal and nobody could figure out what happened because the next day she started having seizures. And what happened was, even though roller coasters are fun, even though I'm trying to convince you guys to get back on it with me, they are a trauma to the spine. So just like you had a trauma to the car accident, sometimes people, it's a simple non-perceived trauma, like a fun time at a roller coaster, could cause these same effects. So we found that neuromuscular issue, but because the body had went through the wasting process, I knew we were going to take several months to have to regenerate tissue. And if you're on too many medications, when you do try to nourish your body, it inhibits the absorption of those nutrients. So I knew there's no way, if we can't safely get off these medications, that you could actually ever heal, because we wouldn't be able to absorb the nutrients that you needed to recover to the level that you needed to recover. In the medical industry and conventional medicine, there's a belief that you cannot regenerate bone, like with osteoporosis. Luckily, that's why I believe, God prepared me for this time for you. I've had multiple people even in their 80s reverse osteoporosis. So I knew if we could just help you get off the medication, stabilize, you being in your 30s, and we could pour into your body, that the body would regenerate the tissue. What's tough though, and we've talked about this a few times, it really has to be super basic at first. You have to like remove all the variables. You have to be willing to be in bed rest if that's to the level of illness that you're at, and just be okay to rest and receive without feeling like a burden or without losing hope. Because when some people are relaxing too much, they believe it's their end time, that they have to be up doing or else they're going to lose everything. You know, if you don't use it, you lose it. But many people, that's what delays the healing process because they're going too quick, too fast. So I know in the beginning, it had to be hard to trust that if I just lay in this bed and do these simple little correctives and Nico feeds me, that I'm going to be okay. But how long would you say that you were on full-time bed rest? Because there was, in the beginning, I couldn't even do any therapy with you for like rolling and stretching because it could have tore ligaments and tendons. It could have impacted your vertebrae. So we had to stay super simple in the beginning.
Yeah. So it was 9 months before I could actually walk, because up until that point, Nico would have to pick me up, put me in a wheelchair and wheel me to the bathroom or anywhere that I went. And even a wheelchair, I couldn't sit there for more than 5 to 10 minutes without severe pain.
Yeah, that's why she was actually the first 6 months, she was just a bedpan. She couldn't get out of the bed.
And it made it even more difficult because at that point, after I got out of the hospital, I went into a severe ulcerative colitis flare. And that meant going to the bathroom every 5 minutes, literally. So both of us didn't sleep for a good 6 months because he was constantly bedpan, cleanup, all of it. And it was very humbling, very, very humbling experience. And
yeah. Now, Nico, from your side of it, how did you sustain through all that? I know you're good at running off adrenaline.
Just faith keeps it going. And again, it was knowing that she was going to get better, like knowing that this was it. So yeah, just just believing in this healing process, and just God giving me the grace to believe in it, and to like I said, it was a very slow, difficult process, but it was like we have done all these years with no answers, no hope, like try this new diet, 1 step forward, 2 step back. And this was the first time that, like, in a very short period, she's getting off, I forgot, it was like a week or two, she was off all of her medications because of you. And so this was like the first time that there was
steroids within 2 weeks. I was off of the steroids.
There was a real hope. So it's just like I can sleep next year. You know what I mean? It was one of those things where just like it was tangible what was happening. And so, just God's grace, and, just desperately in love with my wife, and believed years ago that, my love was going to help bring healing to her. Along with Dr. Kim. And so, yeah, just keep going, keep fighting through. Luckily, God made me, I'm hard to kill. So, got to stay in the trenches going. But, yeah, just like I said, it was just seeing the tangible, the hope and the strength and the courage that you bring, and just seeing her, the first person that ever, of course you can do this. Of course your body can heal. Of course, it was just, we'd never experienced it. So it was something brand new, and it was full of hope and fruits. And
it made it even more miraculous because how many months before? 3 months before you had a bicep?
2 months.
2 months before I had my seizures and him having to pick me up off the floor, he had a severe bicep tear and had surgery done.
Tore my bicep 2 weeks after my surgery. She had her first seizure.
A lot of people don't realize he was not only recovering from that, but he was dealing with the hypothyroidism. He was dealing with all these other high cortisol diagnoses that he was also battling through himself. So I feel like he battled sickness just as much as me, but he's stronger than me. So he was able to take
definitely not stronger than her.
It's a different type of strength. Yes. And it's profound. I just met with a client the other day who's been dealing with some tragic things, and I'm helping her through, and, her husband has been getting a little exhausted, and because they've been through a lot of what you had been through as far as multiple physicians, what's been sad for me is there's certain physicians that I think they intend well, and I know they have a high overhead, but some places that are maybe 50 miles from our area are charging like $42,000 for the first visit and for the plan, and you have to drive there every single day. Well, just driving to those places to and from when you're in this kind of condition, like for you, would have been impossible. And so, a person can get overwhelmed. And one of the physicians that she took her husband to said, "Oh, I commend you for not leaving your wife." And I'm like, this is so sad that he even said that to him in front
Yeah,
of her. And sometimes it plants that seed in people's heads, you
exactly.
know? Yeah. And so how, you know, if you were
I
to
just
say something about that, what would you say to a spouse supporting their loved one that's trying to heal?
Yeah. First of all, like I want to, when you had said about the driving, like we had, you know, there wasn't local hospitals that we had any good experiences. So we were driving an hour away to Advent.
Even after I had my
And so
seizure.
after her seizure, actually, again, we're in the car on the way to Advent about 20 minutes away, and she went into another violent seizure. And so with the hand that or bicep I surgically repaired, I'm having to hold her up from while we're driving 100 miles per hour on the highway, and then like the stress of family. And so like that's, you know, the driving back and forth, that's terrible. And so, you know, that does make things so difficult and put so much stress, because then you have, as a spouse, you have all the family members that you have to entertain and everything. But for,
Meanwhile, we also have a 7-year-old son who
Yeah.
was
Mhm.
with us through all of this.
oh yeah, so whew. But just with the spouse, I mean, if you're in love, you're in love. You know, it was for better, for worse. You know, God used my wife to save me so many different times. And you know, her love brought true healing to my heart and to my spirit. And so, you know, I was in it for the long haul. There was, you know, and it's something I encourage couples as a pastor, as a counselor, you know, just, man, keep praying for more love, more attraction, more desire, more just for your spouse. Like if you learn the weapons that we have, if you learn how to pray, how you know how to have to ask God for more desire, more appreciation, and more perspective, like he delivers. And so
We can link some pictures, but my entire physical appearance changed, where I looked like I had a 7-month pregnant belly and toothpicks for legs, and my face was blown up like a balloon, and I looked nothing like I did. And he still looked me in the eyes every day and told me how beautiful I was, and it was sincere and it was genuine. And
that's what love does. So, you know, if you want that love, if you want to, you know, have that, because, you know, like you said, those seeds, there's always going to be that, you know, the grass is green on the other side, but that's just a lie. And so if you learn to trust that, hey, this is for me, this is what I want, this is what, you know, God's provided, you know, if you choose love, you know, love always has its fruits. So if you choose that pathway, if you choose faithfulness, if you choose loyalty, it will always bear that fruit. Love never fails. And we believe that through and throughout.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm so grateful of how much you guys have survived. It's amazing. No, it's big. And then no, what Tiffany said is so true, and that is why I've always been inspired and grateful for how amazing the human body is. Because even when I met Tiffany, and because I've dealt with other people with injuries from steroids, I wasn't sure what was going to reverse as far as her aesthetic look and what would not. I knew that she would lose fluid because the inflammation would go down. But when I first measured her waist, it was like 33 inches because of the distension. And it went down to like 24, 23 now. So it's, people don't realize how much inflammation, and then because of the medication, was causing such a destruction to your body. But no, and now we look at you, and I'll have to tell this story briefly, but my daughters, one time when I was out of town, my daughters, my oldest daughter knows how to do what I do, and then also my youngest daughter has some skills, but they went to the house to check on Tiffany for me and do a little protocol. And so, you know, they always get concerned and pray for the family and that. Well, then when Tiffany went through the majority of her healing process and she was mostly on the other side of it, I said, oh, I got to stop by and see Tiffany. And my youngest daughter Caitlin said, oh, can I go with you, Tiffany and Nico? I'm like, yeah, you can go. And when we went there, she saw Tiffany hugging somebody up and walking around, but she only saw Tiffany on bed rest. So when she saw Tiffany hugging somebody and she looked so different, she thought it was like a house nanny. She didn't know that Tiffany was Tiffany. She goes, oh my gosh, that's a nanny. And then she realized she's like, Mom, that's Tiffany. I'm like, yeah, that's Tiffany. But no, it's just amazing, and how amazing God has made us that you were able to, like, you know, bounce back fairly well. And then some people don't know, we're going to get new scans to show the progress of your bone density, because we know. Yeah, so in the beginning, when I started working with you, there's no way you could have gotten to my place. So I drove to their house and did house calls. And then the first time she was well enough to get to the house, she came in a wheelchair. Then the next time, I think it was like a walker, right? And then now she just pops over, and like even getting on the table the first time, we had to be so slow and make sure she didn't get sick or feel any kind of symptom. And now she just like is rolling around, popping up and down and
Mhm.
popping off the table so Nico can get on. So it's just amazing to see the transition. And that's why Caitlin was so blown away, because how quickly she was moving around the house. But that's why I have to put a governor on her now to make sure that she stays well long term and
Yeah.
that she doesn't burn the candle at both ends. But what's your perception about that, going from bed rest to walker, I mean, to the wheelchair to walker, and now just being able to pop up and down?
It's crazy when I find myself walking across my house and getting up in the morning or getting up quickly at, and like, just, it feels like a dream in so many of ways, because it seemed impossible. And I remember Nico at one point telling me, you're going to be all better by Christmas. And at that point I couldn't walk. So I'm thinking like, it's going to take some time. Like my muscles have to grow back, and it's miraculous how much muscle I've put on already and
Yeah.
how just strong I'm getting. It's
Yeah, just seeing how quick she pops out the bed quicker than me now. But it also goes, as you know, and you live and you teach as well, Dr. Kim, as far as is that it's that positivity. What goes in is what goes out, and just filling yourself with those positive thoughts and doing the right things to meditate and speaking life. And it was the same thing with my torn bicep. It was a 9 to 12 month recovery, and I was 100% within 90 days, literally lifting everything. And it was because there wasn't a complaint. There wasn't that victim mentality. It's, and it's not, things don't happen to us, they happen for us. And if we can buy into that mindset, like we see you living day in, day out, like I said, that's why you imparted the strength and the courage, because, you were sipping your own Kool-Aid. You believed it, you lived it. It was real, it had fruits. And so, just seeing her not complaining, seeing her doing everything she can to put life and love in and around her, it's crazy how you can 10x that healing process by having that mindset, that perception, that attitude of gratitude. And seeing her being such an incredible life coach and who she is, and herself, just living that out day in, day out. It was crazy on, especially for me, how quickly seeing her getting stronger and stronger and stronger. It was just amazing. It was supernatural. And like you said, like God's given us that ability. Like our bodies are so incredible, what they can do when then you add all three parts, add the mind with the body, with all the spiritual things together, and add that positivity. It's amazing what we can do. And like now when we stop with certain doctors, I can't tell how many people have called us, like, I'll be honest, I thought your wife was gonna die. Like we had no idea.
The amazing thing is it actually got even worse than when we had left the hospital. So over the next 6 to 9 months, I wasted away to 70 pounds. I was going through severe refeeding syndrome. I was in more pain, more withdrawal from the steroids than ever. It was literally the worst time, and nobody even got to see me at that point. So if they would see from that to now, it's even more just remarkable.
So
Yeah, no, you're 100%. I so agree. And so those two things I want to cover, and then we'll kind of pull it in, because we know that people only have so much time, and I want to make sure that people listen to this all the way through. But there was, so two things. Well, there was, when you got to a point, Tiffany, because I know when the person going through the healing process can also lose faith and can lose hope. So how did you feel when you felt like you were going to give up? And what do you feel made you change your mind?
There were definitely points where I started to believe the lie that my husband would be better off without me, my son, that they wouldn't have to suffer. It definitely got to that point, and he encouraged me all the way through, and just, it was just a shift. And I remember you coming to me and saying like, listen, this is a choice. Do you want to live? Because if you want to die, you will. And I just really, truly believed in my heart that if I wanted to live, if I truly wanted to live, and I knew I had something to live for, I could share this hope with others, which I've wanted to do all throughout my sickness. I always felt like one day I'm going to be able to walk other people through the pain that I've gone through. And I don't ever want to forget the pain that I've gone through. I want to remember just how bad it hurt myself and those around me. So that was the biggest motivation for me, just wanting to be there for my family, wanting to be a mom, wanting to be a wife, wanting to be a daughter, a sister, and a friend.
Because she was teetering, and I did everything I can through our whole marriage to, always encourage her and, never give up and hold that faith. But even with me being constant, she was still breaking down. And that's why I would be like, oh man, Dr. Kim, because when you were in the room, there was just so much healing for her and so much hope. And it was a pivotal, it was a turning point when you just, as firm as you can be, look, like if you do this, you're going to die. Like, if you want to live, like, this is what it is, but you have to make a choice here. If you don't suck it up, if you don't, buy into this fully, if you don't, do the things I'm telling you to do, you're not going to make it.
And one of my greatest obstacles was, as you know, not being able to eat, because everything I put in my mouth, the amount of, it was just one of the worst experiences. But you told me, I get it, I know, but you have to eat. Just eat the potatoes.
Just eat what you can. I can remember I was driving back, I think from Siwa, this desert, at 2 a.m. in Egypt, and Nico messaged, and I'm like, okay, I've got to go. And so I did like an hour conference call driving in the middle of this desert. Luckily, I had reception, and I remember saying that, like, I think God is selecting for you to heal this way, because if you heal yourself, think of how amazing you're going to be for others. Because again, when I was going through what I was going through, nobody was able to help me. And a lot of people wouldn't even believe that I could have healed. So I had to kind of do it by myself. And so when you do the majority of the healing on your own, and then of course with Nico by your side, and you show how amazing the human body is, when you start helping others, you'll have that same emphatic belief that I did, an unwavering faith. And so as much as I told you I wanted to be there with you, that I felt that you doing this more on your own and just believing in what I had to say, and believing in God and believing in Nico, that it was going to help you become a better healer in the future with the work that you were being called to do, and that you were being prepared. And sometimes when people are in the thick of it and they're at their worst, they don't want to hear about what they're being prepared for later, or that they're going to be used. It's like, and it is just like, screw it, I'm just going to give up. I don't want to do anything. I'd rather die than do this calling. So I'm so grateful that you persevered through all that. And then now, what would you say? So the last thing I wanted to highlight is I have a few young people that are being told they have ulcerative colitis and it's incurable. I had chronic irritable bowel syndrome, spastic colon, a redundant colon. It's all been healed for the last 15 years.
Yeah.
But as a whole, a lot of people don't realize the intestinal lining is one of the most regenerative tissues in the body. So if you learn what is offending it, what's upsetting it, and you take away what's upsetting it, and you give it what it needs to regenerate that tissue, the human body will heal that. So do you feel now the majority of diagnoses that you've received over the last 2 decades, do you feel that they're all going to be completely healed, or like 80% healed? What do you feel?
So I believe that I'm 100% healed. However, I do believe that if I ate like crap, I didn't sleep, I was stressed out, my body has a design, a function that God intended for it. So I believe that I am healed, but I would encourage people, if you have ulcerative colitis, you have these things, how bad do you want healing? Is it worth the French fries? Is it worth the Chick-fil-A? Is it worth, all of these things? What do you really want? And that's the point that you have to come to, because I've met with people who tell me they have a sickness, they have something, but they won't eat red meat. They won't, they refuse certain things. And that's the point I came to. I would have drinking anything, I would have done anything to be healed. And that's the point that you have to come to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some people went through what you went through, where they did do all that and it still didn't work. So they've given up hope. They didn't know that there is a few things missing in some of these diet
that
plans.
was exactly me. Yes, because I had achieved. There was a time and place where I had pan-ulcerative colitis, and I went on a very strict diet, similar to what we've done, and just eating healthy foods, and I reversed it completely. I went in for a colonoscopy, and they were amazed because they wanted to take out my entire colon. And at that point, I knew that diet could reverse it, but I was still not resting. I was still stressed out. I still had all these other factors, and I didn't realize that it was something I had to maintain, and it's totally worth it. Like, if my body's a little extra sensitive, but I just have to eat the right things to thrive and live, it's worth it.
Yeah, no, I learned if we manage the cellular stress and we fix the neuromuscular compensation and then get the right nutrition, the body is really, really amazing. And I want to thank Nico for managing the whole house while we're doing this podcast. I know how hard it is to get through anything. And sometimes it's easier for me to do podcasts when I'm away. Okay, guys. So what I'm grateful for, when we share some of the pictures in the video with this link, and when you share your story and we link it to the show, people are going to really be able to see how profound your healing was. And again, you have people that I know through third party that knew you from high school, that were scared for you, that were worried about you, said you didn't look like anybody that they recognize, and they again thought you were going to pass away. So there's all kinds of people that were praying for you, that are so grateful that you're alive.
Thank
and so
you
grateful
to
that
everyone.
Yeah, and while you were healing, we needed to conserve your energy and not have too much access. We couldn't have you on Instagram the whole time. We couldn't have you putting out your story, because when you're in that healing process, you have to kind of protect your energy, conserve your energy. And as you guys know, not everybody has the same belief system the body can heal. So sometimes when you put out your story too much while you're healing, you will actually pay the repercussions of other people's doubt. People have a lot of emotions attached to this when things are happening. So I'm so grateful that you conserved your energy through the healing time, and then now you can go out and leap forward and share your story with everybody, so that way we
Yes.
can help
Right.
other people heal.
Yeah.
Are there any final words that you wanted to say before we sign off today?
I just want to thank you. Thank you for the bottom of my heart for giving my life back, and for staying dedicated to me like you did. And even now, you're such a wonderful friend, and I know you'd do anything for me at any point in time, and both of us. So we are eternally grateful to you. And I just pray that more people get opened up to this idea and mindset, so that the world can heal and be a better place.
Amen.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. And thank you guys for trusting me enough to come into your hospital room and start this journey together. I can't wait till we heal thousands more together.
That's right.
That's
Amen.
right.
Thank you guys. I hope you have a beautiful day and a very Merry Christmas.
Thank
right.
you.
Love you.
You
Merry
too.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.